This video is about dreams and the subconscious. So in the first part of this video, we have discovered what interpreting dreams is not, i.e. it is not the collection of a range of dream images in an index by other people, often the authors of popular books, which are definitive dream symbols which could or should be used by people in interpreting their dreams. As we said, that is quite a wrong way of going about it. We did learn that the nature of consciousness is complex and that it involves a conscious mind, which is the one that guides us and we are aware of and use every day, and the subconscious mind. And the image that I used was that of an iceberg, you may remember, where the subconscious mind represents the 80% of the iceberg that is submerged. We began to talk a little bit about the way in which it was possible to make connections between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and how the person who helped understand this more than anybody else, in fact, was the progenitor of the language and the thinking in this area of psychodynamic psychology, was the great Carl Jung. Now, Carl Jung did have a complex theory which ran to some 24 or 25 thick volumes dealing with what he called the archetypes and the elements of the subconscious. So he really did try to describe the subconscious in some detail. Well, you'll be relieved that we're not going to go into so much detail here. What I'm going to do is simply present to you the two archetypes to begin with, which are the most important. And these are the archetypes that Jung refers to over and over again, and you will hear referred to from other psychodynamic psychologists and even in popular parlance. They are the ego and the self. Now, the ego is me. It is the person that's decided that it would be cool to make this video. If it's a little arrogant to have assumed that I should be making a video on this erudite subject, then it's the arrogant me that's doing just this. It's the person who's become frustrated about not being able to handle the editing suite on iMovie. It's the person who's sitting here. It is the ego, it is me. And sometimes we refer to somebody as having an overinflated ego. That's a piece of common parlance, meaning that they're perhaps rather cocksure or proud of themselves. Somebody with low self-esteem, who finds it difficult to make their way because of that low self-esteem, we may say that they need to develop a stronger sense of ego. So the ego describes the conscious living person that is me. The parallel within the subconscious part of the consciousness to the ego, Jung called the self, and it's usually written with a capital S when referred to in text. So the self is sort of like a, almost in a Platonic sense, like a sort of blueprint or like a negative of the ego, and yet it's not. Because the self is also somewhat idealized. It is, if you will, that part of the subconscious that represents the person that we would most or could most become. This is very, very important, and it's something that many psychologists after Jung have grappled with, and one of the greatest to grapple with the dialogue between the ego and the self was the psychologist Abraham Maslow. Now, Maslow is probably better known for his work on the triangle of needs, which is very often referred to by those in the social service and caring professions. Maslow talked about a triangle of need, and the base of the triangle is the physical need to be fed, and the apex of the triangle are the emotional and spiritual needs. And Maslow said you can't satisfy the emotional and spiritual needs until you've dealt with the baseline. But we're not interested in that part of Maslow's work here. I merely cite it as a reference point. Maslow also wrote about self-actualization, and this is a wonderful term which helps us to understand this dialogue, this connection between the ego and the self. Self-actualization is the process of beginning to understand the nature of the subconscious self and getting, as it were, the conscious ego into dialogue with that subconscious archetype. It sounds complicated, and it is complicated, because the self inherits that 80% of our consciousness to which we do not have access at all. It is, remember, the submerged part of the iceberg. The way in which we can get access to the subconscious mind, however, is through the process of dreaming. If we are lucky enough to dream often, and if we have not been misguided by books on dreaming that have taken us down the wrong track, we may wake in the morning and reflect, feel, I'd like that dream to have gone on longer. I wonder what that dream was about. That process of wondering what the dream was about, doing no more, but coming to consciousness, waking up, and having that wondering feeling, is very, very important. Because that is part of the process of creating the dialogue between the ego and the self. There's a lot of evidence, isn't there, in history for dreams being associated with wisdom. The Judaic Old Testament tells us of Solomon, known for his wisdom, as also being a great dreamer. The Quran itself was, according to Islamic tradition, delivered to the Prophet Muhammad through the dreams. So dream is associated culturally and historically with very, very important moments of self-actualization. And self-actualization is critical in leadership. Without self-actualized leaders, we will not have leaders who are capable of guiding, inspiring, and carrying societies forward to higher social goals of socialist achievement, well-being, and the commonwealth. Such leaders as Mahatma Gandhi and more recently Martin Luther King, or more recently still Nelson Mandela, have achieved a great degree of self-actualization. In the next video, we will be looking more directly at the nature of the dream.